Okay, I'm recording. It's 1 o'clock, so I'll begin. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session of CLAPS. My name is Anthony Sanchez, librarian for the Social and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Arizona Libraries, and I'll be your moderator today. This session is for Teaching Toward Wholeness, Empowering Relationality in the Information Literacy Curriculum with Sheila Garcia Mazari from UC Santa Cruz and Maya Hobscheid from Grand Valley State University. Please remember that our closing keynote is tomorrow at 11 a.m. or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. I'll put the link in our website and program schedule into the chat. If you would like to connect on Twitter, please remember the hashtag is CLAPS2022, one word. This session will be 50 minutes long with a Q&A portion at the end of the presentation. Please feel free to enter questions into the chat or raise your hand and unmute your mic at that time. We are also using progressive stacking, which prioritizes questions from individuals from marginalized groups. You can write stack or put an asterisk next to your questions to self-identify as a member from a marginalized group, or you can message me directly if you don't wish to publicly identify. This session is being recorded and will be later posted online, except for the Q&A portion. Thank you so much to Sheila and Maya, and please take it away.
All right, thank you so much, Anthony. Hi, everyone. So my name is Sheila Garcia Mazari. My pronouns are she, her, and I am currently the online learning librarian at the University of California, Santa Cruz. I join you all from the ancestral home of the Anishinaabe people, the Council of Three Fires, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi, who of course continue to be here to this day, seeking to repair the damage of colonization to their communities. I also want to acknowledge that the institution I work for, the University of California, Santa Cruz, is located on the unceded territory of the Waswas-speaking Yupi tribe. The Mamutsun tribal band are the direct descendants of the tribal groups whose villages and territories fell under the sphere of influence of the missions San Juan Bautista and Santa Cruz, and are currently working to regain their sovereignty and protect their homeland.
And hi, my name is Maya Hobscheid. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the instructional design librarian at Grand Valley State University, and I'm also joining you from the ancestral home of the Anishinaabe people, the Ojibwe, Odawa, and Potawatomi. Our presentation today is titled Teaching Toward Wholeness, Empowering Relationality in the Information Literacy Curriculum. And we would like to start by asking you a couple of questions. So we will be using Slido for several polls throughout the session. So we recommend once you go to the link on the slide that you keep that page open so you're ready for future polls. And the first question we're asking is, have you ever felt like your lived experience wasn't reflected in the literature? So far, I'm just seeing 100% yes. Okay, a couple no's. Looks like it's been roughly around 80-20, kind of holding. So I guess give another few seconds for folks to jump in. Okay, now we're more like 75-25. A little. It looks like we're holding pretty steady, so I'm going to go ahead and move to our next question, which is, if you have had this experience, can you share that time with us if you feel comfortable? When a time when your lived experience wasn't reflected in the literature. Researching mental health experiences specific to my identities. Being a poor single mother who also works in academia. Disabled teaching librarians, not well represented in the literature. Women with mental illness, hard-time work that looks at physical and emotional pain of women. Sorry, screen's a little bit blocked moving things so I can see the full responses. A hard time with work that looks at physical emotional pain of women as best fake or at worst hysterical behavior. People like me are coded in the literature as low cis and not much more. Thank you all for sharing these. We appreciate you sharing your personal experiences with us. Being queer and disabled in libraries without MLS. This Latin representation in literature is based on Mexican and Puerto Rico experiences, different experiences, PhD trajectory and experiences, disabled librarianship. Someone says it's easier to remember times when it was reflected. That's hard to hear, I'm sorry. Information for late diagnosed neurodivergent people, especially as a woman who masks heavily. Basically, any article where obesity is mentioned, it only looks at young men who have different metabolisms than women at the same or other ages. Lack of representation for urban natives. Thank you all so much for sharing your experiences. And I'm sorry that you've had those experiences. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next slide now.
Right. So I echo Maya and thanking you all for being vulnerable and sharing those experiences. You may be asking yourself, why are we asking these questions to start off our session? And these questions are really rooted in a core aspect of relationality, which is grounding a person's identity with the land, their ancestors, future generations, and their relationships with others. When we speak about research with students, that's often speaking through the ACRL framework for a lot of folks. And oftentimes we're also using the frame of research as conversations, helping students see how their research may build on the work of prior scholars. So this is an aspect of relationality that we think that we can push a bit farther as a profession by empowering the student to think not only about the new insights that they can bring to a topic, but also how their own relationships to the topic, to individuals, and to the land shape their knowledge building. Can you move to the next slide, Maya? All right, so I'm going to share with you all a personal example that I had about a year ago, searching the literature, and I've shared this with a couple of people who are working in librarianship. So the term empacho, for folks who don't know, empacho is a folk illness among Latinx communities that relates to when food sticks to the stomach lining, which then makes it difficult for an individual to eat well and digest food well. To cure empacho, a massage is usually used to dislodge the food stuck to the intestines. So you usually go to a sobadora or sobador, which are people who know how to massage the body correctly. And they use a mixture of olive oil and a mineral salt rock known as tequisquite during the massage. So I was in a position in which my nephew was not eating very well, and my sister wasn't sure what was wrong. She had gone to the doctors more than once, and they weren't sure what was wrong either. And so we both decided, hey, maybe this is empacho. And we don't actually know anyone nearby anymore that is a sobador or sobadora. So we decided to do a quick online search for empacho. And I just typed it into Google. I didn't even go to a library database. I just typed into Google, see what would come out. And it immediately came up as indigestion. It showed up on the right-hand side as indigestion. And As you can see on the slide on the right-hand side, indigestion is discomfort in your upper abdomen. It describes certain symptoms such as abdominal pain and a feeling of fullness soon after you start eating rather than a specific disease. Indigestion can also be a symptom of various digestive diseases. So indigestion isn't necessarily very specific. It's you have all these symptoms and we're still trying to figure out what it is. So we're gonna put it under this umbrella of indigestion. Whereas empacho is a specific illness through, you know, a lens of traditional knowledge. And so I found it really interesting and very telling that this search immediately translated this folk illness through a Western lens rather than let it stand on its own through a traditional or holistic medicinal lens. So this experience of mine, as well as the experiences from other folks at Grand Valley State University, where I used to work with Maya, who were seeking to move toward a more holistic approach to research, really influenced the creation of the instructional programmatic assessment rubric. The rubric builds on the ACRL framework, adjusting it a bit to take into account local contexts, but also expanding to include aspects of relationality, particularly through the row titled Managing Emotional States and Cycles of Research, which is found on page 11 and 12 of the rubric. So Maya, could you drop the link in the chat at all for the rubric, or I can do that real quick too. So that I wanted to make sure that you all can look through it if you wanted to during this session. So what I'm referring to while I talk, oh, thank you, Amber. Well, I'm referring to while I talk is pages 11 and 12 if you wanted to reference them specifically. So that row, which is called the Managing Emotional States and Cycles of Research, it takes into account that all knowledge is cultural and it's based within a relational context that will be different from one individual to another. In this regard, if an individual does not see relationships that they have built with non-Western forms of knowledge reflected in academic discourse, it can disempower an individual and lead them to question this traditional knowledge. This is especially true in classrooms that will hold a peer-reviewed article as the most credible source of information. In research, there's often this need to create new insights or bring groundbreaking ideas to the forefront. But within a relationality lens, research is not only about the topic that you're examining, it's about how it's examined within the context of not only building new knowledge, but honoring the relationships in our daily lives that lead to these new insights. So it's less so about getting published and more about the journey, right? So relationality also makes it clear that research needs to come to a full circle. And I think that in librarianship and academia, there's been a lot of talk around this idea that we don't want research to be transactional, where we are studying a community and we're not following up with them and making sure that they benefit from whatever insights are made. So in a way to acknowledge the circular relationship where the research has an impact on the researcher as much as it may on the field of study, on the communities that they're working with, this instructional programmatic rubric also emphasizes that students could use resources for feedback and self-care as they're needed. Maya, you're still muted.
Of course I am. So here's a preamble, which you can also find in the rubric, which is linked in the chat, in which we define managing emotional states and cycles. And so Sheila and I went ahead and highlighted a few phrases that we see as particularly relevant to and related to relationality and research, but I'm going to read the full text for us. So researching is an emotional prospect, though it may often be seen as primarily intellectual. Discovering new information may be exciting, depressing, or it may challenge individual worldviews. And these emotional states can influence the research process itself. Acknowledging this is an important step to managing research. Students approach research as whole people with past lived experiences that may intersect with research topics and the research process. Encountering worldviews that negate lived experiences can be upsetting and even traumatizing. Strategies for managing these kinds of emotional distress, include building in time and space to reflect on and process the information a student finds, seeking feedback to check in or get an alternate perspective, and pausing or stopping research. These strategies are all valid ways to protect and support your well-being. Managing emotional states is often a nonlinear process, and you may need to engage in self-care at multiple points in the research process. So this really shows what we as librarians in this institution value. However, we also need to take in account, especially through that relationality lens, that we're working within a larger institution. So we're going to have other viewpoints from like faculty and staff or community members. And this in turn can affect how we will affect how we work with this lens in teaching information literacy. So with that in mind, we want to ask you a question. So we'll return to the Slido poll here. And the question is, how much do you and or your faculty see research as primarily intellectual? So got a 5. 3, okay, couple threes. Okay, so it looks like it's definitely skewing towards more intellectual.
Yes.
Like 4 is winning out now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's move on to our next question, which is how much do you or your faculty see research as primarily emotional?
Oh,
So,
wow.
wow, yeah,
A lot of
very
ones.
different. Wow. So we're not seeing even the same balance as we were seeing with the one about primarily intellectual. It's really skewing towards less. It's interesting. And our next question related to this is, what words come to mind when you think of emotional responses to the research process? So we just included a couple examples here of things that we think about, so trauma-informed, anxiety, curiosity, but these can be anything. We're curious to hear. Oh, tears from students. So stress is big. Frustration. We have curiosity.
Curiosity.
That's a good one.
Yeah. I'm holding out for joy. Passion. I saw passion. Okay.
Passion is great. I see excitement. That's nice. I also see paralysis in there. That's less exciting.
Exhausting. Confusion.
Absolutely. Triggering. Yeah, see excitement, frustration, confusion, and then coming through with a different mix. But lots of different things here.
Wow.
Definitely skewing towards the negative.
Yep.
Well, thank you all for sharing. It's like it's slowing down a little, so go ahead and move on to our next slide.
All right. So I hope that the questions that Maya asked allowed you to reflect a bit about local practices at your institutions and how these may be reflected in your own relationality practice or how they may not be reflected. Sometimes they can be a way to look at support you might have on campus, but they can also be a way for you to look at barriers that you're facing in your campus. So Maya and I will now take some time to share some examples of our work in building relationality. So for this first example, I wanted to share the making space mentality, which was shared with me by Dr. Andrea Riley-Mukevitz, who is Associate Professor of Liberal Studies at Grand Valley State University. She is an enrolled member of the Chippewa of Thames Band from Muncie, Ontario. So making spaces extends the conversation of decolonial Skillshares of not only creating something physically, but doing so through the exchange of ideas as well. So for folks that don't know what a decolonial Skillshare is, it's a method of teaching in which knowledge is exchanged between teacher and student during the process of creating something together. So traditionally, it could be something like teaching someone else how to do beadwork or something similar along those lines. In information literacy, it can be a bit harder because we don't necessarily have the space, the time to create something in a space together to exchange ideas. And so the making space mentality really extends that toward we're exchanging ideas toward forming something maybe not physical, but something, exchanging ideas toward creating something, either a research topic, a first paragraph, a research question that you're working with a student. And so in my case, when I learned of this concept, it really meant reshaping my mentality around interactions with students, such as during the one-on-one consultation or during library events, to see them as less of a transactional space and more of a space of exchanging information and building relationships. The reframe really guided my work, in particular with the undocumented DACA peer support group on campus. And I want to say right now, it can be really difficult to do this in a one-shot class, right? But the reframe kind of helps you get started to thinking about this. And this happened outside of the classroom. I had already served on the undocumented DACA task force for a couple of years as a representative of the library. And I heard that students wanted to publish about their experiences as students at the university and publish it into a book. At the time, the library had some extra funds and were seeking to provide grants to projects related to collections. So I proposed this project to students and to the library, and the library was really excited about it. And the students were excited and yet also had certain reservations in it, right? So eventually they were like, you know what, we really like this idea. And the idea was to publish their stories through the Cartonera model. And the Cartoneras, for folks that don't know, they are hand-painted books made with cardboard covers. The practice began in Argentina as an artistic and political movement, and today has spread to various other parts of the world. They are meant to disintegrate over time. They're not necessarily meant for long-term preservation, but they're a way to get stories that wouldn't traditionally be published in newspapers, in published books, and get those stories out in the hands of people. So after students agreed to the concept of the Cartonera, they're really excited about this concept. The library then had to adjust several policies and procedures to meet the needs of students. So in this way, we really foster this relationship by letting students take the lead. So I presented this idea and said, do you want to do it? And they said yes. And we want to have the Cartonera digitized, for example. To do this, I had to submit the Cartonera as a group author, as GVSU undocumented students, so that the students could remain anonymous, because that was a big thing for them. They did not want their names attached to anything. So in order to work around this, the folks at Grand Valley State University were really, really awesome, because what they did is they reworked the copy of their agreement for digitization so that it did not require anyone to sign off on it, but it gave them each student a copy, which I gave to them, so that they could write in their name if they ever decide, I don't want my Cartonera online anymore. All they had to do was show up at the library, share their own copy of the agreement, and then they would take it down. So all the documentation lay with the student rather than with the library. And that way the library didn't keep any records of students, and we could respect their privacy in that way. The students also asked for their cartoneras to live long-term in special collections because they wanted them to last as long as possible. So that also necessitated an adjusted approach. So the folks in special collections also tweaked a little bit the policy language to allow for the library to meet the needs of students through a group author as well, and also provide them with the ability to keep track of what's happening with the cartoneras once they've been in special collections. So at the end of the day, we really sought to build relationality toward truly valuing what the students most wanted, which was to share their stories with others and with future generations. And the hope is that the collection can continue to grow each year so that they're building on, right, the knowledge of other students as well.
So we also wanted to share some strategies for negotiating instructional approaches. And our strategies have really grown out of our understanding of trauma-informed approaches. So Sheila and I had both participated in a trauma-informed library services learning circle that was offered through Grand Valley State University libraries during the pandemic. So it felt very relevant. And the learning circle explored a variety of trauma-informed approaches. So that included intersectional trauma, compounded trauma, collective trauma, and cultural betrayal trauma theory. And so here are just a few ways that we have applied those theories to our instruction.
I get to talk again. So really through that trauma-informed lens, relationality really emphasizes that it's not only about your own approach, but the approach of the instructor as well. So I'm thinking through the lens of one-shot instruction. The tone of the class will really impact how effective a librarian is as an instructor. How the rapport between the existing professor, lecturer, and their students is going to impact the way the librarian is able to build rapport as well with the students. So one such example that I experienced that I've actually shared with many librarians, because it stays with me, was an example of a professor who wanted to use the video of George Floyd's murder as a teaching tool. When this instructor emailed me, I had a moment of like anger, disbelief, and so much confusion. I couldn't understand how they could see this as a possible teaching tool. So I actually, at the moment, I didn't have the best response and sat on this email for a while before responding because I wasn't sure like how I could come back to it. So looking back, this was really a moment in which I could really negotiate a lot more their approach to the topic. But I also wanted to honor my own boundaries because it was just such a shocking ask to ask me. They were asking me to find the full video for them is what they were asking. And I share this example because when instructors use Black and brown paint as teaching tools, it will automatically impact the way in which a librarian engages with the class. If you're entering a class in which instructors are using this as like, this is a teaching tool, you're going to come into a classroom in which the relationship set between the instructor and the students are not the best. Students may feel completely uncomfortable. This is an unsafe space for them. They're just here for a grade truly, and they want to get out as soon as possible. And that means that they're not going to really, be in a headspace to really listen to what you have to say. So I think this really emphasizes why relationships with faculty are important to build, because it can help facilitate those difficult conversations when, events like this occur. And for anyone asking, Sheila, what did you do? So what I did was I said, this video does not exist. I am happy to help you find research tools that may speak to what you are trying to teach, which is, what are you trying to teach? Because they didn't really make it clear what it was. What was the point that they were trying to teach? Eventually, I think the professor just dropped it altogether and was like, I'm not going to teach this thing at all. But yeah, and I also want to acknowledge that different people will have different approaches to it, right? Some people, I did not have a long-standing relationship with this faculty member. It was one of the first time they had ever reached out, which really impacted the way in which I was able to interact with them. So that really speaks to how important relationality is, because if you have built the time with the professor, it's a bit easier to say, I don't think this is appropriate, and let me tell you why.
Yeah, the relationship with the instructor becomes really important. Something else that I think about a lot when with student capacity and negotiating for that. So oftentimes I'll get requests from instructors who clearly just want me to cover way too much content in a class period. They were at like everything and the kitchen sink. And I really attribute that often to that there's just so much, right? They want their students to learn about the library. They want their students to learn how to do research. There's so much they want to cover. And they have this 50 minutes in which they want me to do all of it, which is, of course, not pedagogically or physically possible. And so I've gotten a lot better, especially as I build those relationships with instructors and with faculties, at being able to have that discussion and be able to talk about, well, what do we really want to accomplish? What are our learning goals here? What are our objectives? What do students really need? What do they need for their assignments? What is going to be manageable for them? And I find that really important because students are going to get overwhelmed with that content, and they're going to not absorb anything. And I don't know if they absorb things when I'm teaching anyways, but it's making sure that I am using that time and I'm using that space well, and I'm using it for what's best for the students, right? Because yes, it's about the instructor and it's about what the instructor wants, but it's really about what is going to be best for the students and what the students need in that moment. So another way that trauma-informed approaches have been really useful to have been a useful structure have been for building trust with students. So that can be really challenging in all settings, but especially during a one-shot instruction session. And so one way that I address this is by discussing the emotional impact of research with students. So using that row of the rubric. As you can see on the slide, I asked students to anonymously share what emotions they experience when doing research. And you can see it's similar to what we saw in this room. It's mostly negative, but it's all over the place. And it gives us a chance to have a discussion then about why we experience those emotions and the impact of that. And I work with a lot of first-year students, and and it might be their first time really expressing that in that way. And I get so many different answers. And sometimes it's just they're overwhelmed with everything they have to do, or it's new kinds of research, or sometimes it's the content, or it's different kinds of sources that they're not used to. And it's a great moment for us to take what's often the subtext of discussions and make it the text. So this is something, when I started doing this, I realized that I've had these conversations before with students, but I've never put that name to it. So often when I meet with students one-on-one, we do end up talking about emotions because that's always part of research, but we didn't discuss, we didn't name that, and we didn't acknowledge that. And acknowledging it becomes really important, because then we can talk about how we can deal with that, what coping strategies we can use, and we have that conversation, and we can have that at the beginning. We can have that conversation before we talk about research, before we get started with research. And so I do that a lot at the beginning of classes, which really helps set the tone for the rest of the class. And it's both for the students, and it's also for the instructor, and it's for me too, so that we're all on the same page there.
All right, so the final example we want to share with you all today is of a tutorial that Maya and I worked on along with 2 other colleagues at Grand Valley State University. This tutorial was made using the Rise 360 software, and it was made with non-traditional students in mind. It was, however, made with a course neutral approach, so it could be used for other courses as well. The tutorial focused on the social emotional component of research with 3 main learning outcomes. Students will be able to develop awareness of available support services and when to use them, identify strategies for feeling more connected to your academic community, and recognize different types of motivation and how to utilize them. So on the right-hand side of the slide is a screenshot of one part of the tutorial. This section provided various coping strategies for students to help guide them through a tough spot on their research. The tutorial also seeks to reinforce relationships between students and other campus resources on campus, other campus resources, as it highlights resources such as the Center for Adult and Continuing Studies, the Writing Center on campus, as well as the University Counseling Center. So as Maya has mentioned, sometimes you realize you do talk to students about this, but you don't necessarily name it. And being able to have those tools, have this online tutorial in which you're like, I am happy to talk about it, but if you want more help, if you want someone on campus that's specifically trained to help you talk through a lot of what you're experiencing, being able to connect them to other campus resources can help them a lot more. So this tutorial is being piloted this fall semester, and hopefully it will provide greater insight as to how we as instructors can help guide this conversation around research, not just being about a grade or finding new insights, right? But also about the impact on the researcher themselves and their communities as well.
So now that we've shared our strategies and approaches with you, we would like to hear what strategies you've used, or maybe you could anticipate using to help students become more aware of relationality in research.
I also want to honor for folks that are in institutions where I'm completely at odds with instructional approaches and faculty here. It's okay to say, I don't know.
Always an appropriate answer. I use it a lot. We have hashtag cite Black women. Yes. Encourage students to find research topics that they have feelings about, so they have more to write about, say. Absolutely. Modeling it through co-teaching, like that. Take a moment to reflect on their positionality. Wikipedia editing assignments, yes. Use resources written by folks in traditionally marginalized groups, absolutely. Talk about student projects in our scholarship repository. Research things they care about. Offer to build a part of the project together. Health equity tourism. Article about it, and then having to research the Black women and gender nonconforming people who did the work better and originally. Yes. These are coming in faster than I can go. So students to approach research in terms of their communities, what archives or knowledge are valued in their communities. Reminding students what they bring to the project too. When noticing a student starting to become emotional or upset about their research, recognizing it verbally and offering to take a break. Examine authority, given authority with citation. Problematizing peer review. Yeah, absolutely. Utilize various examples from different perspectives. Building in moments of reflection to the research process. These are really good. Participate in campus-wide efforts to support student research. Share it with the community. When doing one-on-ones, checking in periodically and asking how you're feeling. Yeah, absolutely. Finding qualitative or own voices research in addition to RCT studies, and then a reflection, what that's important or valuable. Time for reflection, acknowledging positionality. Talk about authority. Acknowledging classes work can be hard and stressful. Yeah, they should take care of themselves. Yeah. Self-care for scholars workshop. I love that. Check-ins on how they're feeling and how that may guide their research. Yeah, one-on-one again, asking how they're doing or feeling. Acknowledging emotions, giving examples. I love that. Thank you all for sharing these. These are great. I'm getting a lot of ideas reading them. Looks like there's some more folks still typing, so I'll just give a minute. Bring snacks to research consultations. Yeah. I have a colleague who offers hot chocolate. I always love that. Talk about how research is hard and takes time, and that it's only worth it if it's meaningful to you. Do not say that research is easy, or that, yeah, this database is easy, or this process is simple. Absolutely, that kind of casual, dismissive language that we use. Model disability, inclusion, and community. Yeah. Talk about what can go wrong in research. Yes, absolutely. Partner up with another student doing research weekly to support each other, to check in. That. These are really good. See, we're please keep thinking of these, please keep putting them in. We're not closing the Slido, but just looking at the time, I'm going to move on.
All right, so we're going to wrap up real quick and give time for questions. So just a quick wrap up of some key points we talked about during this presentation. So supporting students with emotional states of research builds relationality and supports them as whole people.
And we need to be aware of the constraints we each individually face as part of a larger community. So creative problem solving can help us work around or confront these constraints.
And remember that relationality can be established both within and outside of the classroom. The library is both physical and digital space, and you can leverage these to build stronger relationships with others.
Finally, we just have a few references here. So I think we can go to questions. So I'm going to stop sharing.
So the first question is your research tutorial available to view for those outside of your institution?
Yes, it is. I will go get the link.
And the next question is, could someone post the references to the chat as well? And might you leave the slides of your references while we do the Q&A, please?
Yes, absolutely. I can go back to that.
I can put the references in the slide real quick. Just copy and pasting there. Okay.
So a question is, can you give examples of how you might address the emotions students identify in the beginning of the session as you do the instruction session?
So this is not my practice, but I have a feeling that she would be completely comfortable with me sharing with this, because I think she presented at a separate CLAPS conference about this. So I had a former colleague who would put up a Padlet and ask students how they feel about research, and like directly speak to their emotions throughout the session. It does require you to be more flexible in your approach to what you're teaching, right? You don't want to segment out, and we're going to talk about this and we're going to talk about that. It requires you to be able to interweave this part about the conversation throughout what you're already planning to teach. And it also, in a way, you're not going to be able to cover everything you want a lot of times. So if students express specific needs, you might need to backtrack and be like, I need to address this now. My thought is that when a student feels comfortable expressing it in the classroom, even through a Padlet, it allowed them to express this anonymously. They're really feeling those emotions and would really want you to address them in some way, even if it means possibly not showing something about the website, right? Hopefully there's online content available that you can share with the professor. So like, I also meant to cover this, and here's some content, a video or a handout or something that can help cover some of those topics. But that is an approach that I thought worked really well, so that students can get grounded in the space.
And I would just add one thing that I tend to notice when I do this is that a lot of students are sharing things like anxieties around lack of knowledge. Like they feel stressed because they don't know if a source they're using is credible, or they're stressed because they can't find sources for their topic, or they can't choose, or they don't know what to choose for the topic. So often we can have conversations about that, about these more practical skills too, or things that we can kind of talk about, or they just don't know where to go for help. And so we can have conversations about that, or often it's things I'm going to already share. I can talk about how I'm able to support them, how we have other resources on campus that can support them, or if it's that things where they feel burned out or they feel like it's too much, we can talk about taking breaks. We can talk about taking that space, where we could talk about other kinds of coping mechanisms. So it kind of depends on what is kind of fueling those emotions. And those are often lots of different reasons. And sometimes it is like, I just have to work with students one-on-one and sort of talk about them, talk about their topic, talk about the kind of resources they're finding. And it's not necessarily a easy solution, or it's not something that can be addressed at once in this session, but it's starting to have those conversations and making them comfortable coming to me so that they can talk about those things too, or going to their professor, whoever they feel comfortable talking about that with.
So the next question is, how can you teach students to balance deadlines and outside institutional requirements with self-care and their own knowledge systems?
But Maya, do you want to go ahead? I think my question on there is, how are we leveraging other resources on campus that are working toward helping students with this, right? I don't think it necessarily falls on librarians who are trying to help students understand, research is hard, make sure you take space for self-care, to also be the people that are like, when you need self-care, if you need to talk to someone, we'll be there all the time. There's other resources on campus that you can also leverage to be like, they might also have better tools available to you. I'm like thinking in my mind about the fact that I'm always not the best at this too. So I would rather send a student to someone that has the training, that is able to coach them through it and can stick with them for longer than a research project. Because if they're having trouble balancing, right, deadlines and outside institutional requirements with their research, it's something that's going to impact them beyond just like this paper. And I want them to see it as this is something that we want to work on holistically, because it's going to impact your